All right, very good evening, everyone. Welcome to all the MOOC participants connecting with us today for the proteomics course and proteogenomics course. Today in the live session, we are going to talk to you directly from our lab. I'm going to show you some of the proteomic technologies, how it can be used for various type of clinical applications. While we are talking to you in terms of showing you technologies and applications, we'll be also happy to take any questions and try to answer you during the live session. So let us first think about the field of growing proteomics and proteogenomics, which is more and more becoming dependent upon mass spectrometry based technologies. And I must say that advancement and revolutions which are happening in the state of the art advanced mass spectrometers, they have really accelerated the pace of understanding the complex biological system at the really unprecedented scale which was not thought of earlier. Now we can look at thousands and thousands of protein from the plasma sample, tissue sample, any other type of biological material in a single short run in just 2 hours or 3 hours, which is really remarkable if you think about how cumbersome is to study one protein even at a time. And now we are thinking and discussing, and even it has become a reality to look into thousands of protein at that scale, right? So we are going to today focus mainly on mass spectrometry based proteomics. And while doing so, we'll also give you some idea that how the sample preparation happens, how the instrumentations can be used, what are the principles, and finally, how you can do some applications on these type of technologies, especially mass spectrometry based platforms. Let me first show you this short video clip of our MS facility, and then I'll take you directly to the lab.
We are proud to announce the high-resolution mass spectrometry-based proteomics research facility set up at IIT Bombay. DBT-funded high-resolution mass spectrometry facility will cater to the increasing needs of the Indian research community with the help of state-of-the-art proteomics instrumentations. The facility aims at offering services ranging from proteomic and metabolomic investigations of samples, understanding PTMs in complex samples, validating of target proteins and metabolites, and their relative and absolute quantitation. Community can also benefit from access to other platforms available at IIT Bombay, like microarray, Malditalk, and surface plasmon resonance, all under the same roof. We also intend to offer high-quality training and educational programs in proteomics. We strongly believe in transgenerational capacity to advance the proteomics knowledge for the benefits of global science and societal development.
Come join us to be a part of one of the largest proteomics facility in India to realize the dream of late President Dr. Kalam and make India a superpower in proteomics and big data science.
All right, so let me get ready to move inside the lab and especially to follow the biosafety regulations. So I'm going to take you to this proteomics lab, and especially this is also a national facility where we have various type of mass spectrometer instruments which are very advanced from the deep proteome analysis as well as targeted proteomics based analysis and metabolomics analysis. A facility is generously funded by Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, and Ministry of Human Resource Development. We also have several centers of excellence in our facility and center, especially one by Thermo Fisher Scientific to advance the proteomics knowledge using mass spectrometry. So let me just now move to the facility and lab and take the next steps forward directly from there. So you will hear a lot of noise now because we are in the live lab right now. And most of the time for any type of biological experiment, the sample preparation becomes very important. And that, of course, we are going to do in the lab, which is the wet lab experimental area. But when the samples are prepared, Then we can, process those samples to look at what is their entire protein composition using these type of advanced instrumentation, right? So theoretically, you have been exposed about LC-MS. You have learned about different type of mass spectrometry configurations. This is what is LC-MS, right? We have the liquid chromatography part here, and then followed by we have the electrospray ionization, and then we have the mass spectrometer. So this is what, and this could come in different type of configuration. This is another type of LC-MS, liquid chromatography, electrospray ionization, and the mass analyzer. I'll show you one more type of LC-MS. So this is another type of LC, liquid chromatography, followed by electrospray ionization and then the mass analyzer. So while you can appreciate that there are different type of mass spectrometers available, but they have very different applications, right? So all three of them are LC-MS, but depending on what type of mass analyzers they have and what is your application, you can choose the right platform. So for example, to begin with, to investigate any problem, we would like to first look at what are all proteins present in that given sample, which is known as the shotgun proteomics or deep proteome analysis, right? So that's where you first come to the very advanced Orbitrap instruments, where you'd like to know the entire possible proteome from the given sample type. And to do that, you can, first digest your protein, get peptides, separate those peptides with the liquid chromatography, ionize those peptides to make it ionized gaseous forms, let them move it inside in the mass analyzers. And this one is the tribrid instrument, which is having quadrupoles, Orbitrap, and ion trap, so that you can get better resolution for the separating these peptides. Now, this is another instrument which can be used for looking at also complex proteome or metabolome, which is Q-executive Orbitrap with the quadrupoles. Again, this is also with the nano LC, like the previous one, when we can separate the peptides. Once you do this kind of discovery-based workflow, either label-free or label-based, then you'd like to identify that, okay, which are the proteins of interest I have, which can be taken for the clinical application or healthcare application. Then you'd like to go for targeted proteomics, and that's where this instrument comes into the play, which is the triple quadrupole mass spectrometer, where you can select the peptides of interest, and you tell the software that only screen these peptides of my interest, and rest everything you ignore, and I want to test my assay based on the quantification of these peptides. This is known as selected reaction monitoring assay. While whatever you do in the proteomics, you also want to understand the genome of that. So that's where the next generation sequencer instruments comes into the play to get the sequencing of the genome, right? And of course, you need various type of SPLC for complex proteome separation. So this gives you a little bit visual feel of various concepts which we have been talking in the course regarding different type of mass spec configuration, different type of need for having these mass analyzers, why you need hybrid, why you need tribrid. So these type of things, I think, will become more clearer to you as you are, going to see these instruments live, right? But the reality is that you'd like to first prepare good sample, and good sample preparation is the key for any success of your project. Whatever biological projects, clinical projects you have in your mind, first thing you'd like to do a good sample preparation. So first, you have a complex tissue or the cell, you'd like to lyse those and want to make sure it breaks open properly, and then you can get all the contents out from that. Especially you'd like to get the proteins out from that and everything else, which could be nucleic acid, which could be carbohydrate, lipids, salt, all that you want to remove that, eliminate those out. So therefore, you'd like to get, the clean protein from the complex samples. And once you do that, then you'd like to quantify that how much protein you got from the complex sample. There are many steps involved. Of course, we cannot show everything live right now, but those steps involve quantification as well as looking at the quality check of these samples, right? Let me stop unsharing the screen and try to get you more coverage for the lab area now. So we are going to show you the protein in solution digestion, which is the key for the first step of moving forward for the mass spec based proteomics. Let's take a context or the clinical problem of interest, which is currently very hot topic about COVID-19 research. So even for COVID-19 research, when we wanted to start doing the work, we had no idea for how best we can take the workflow forward, because there was no set precedented protocol available for doing that. So you have to try out different ways of protein extraction method from the cell. And first sample type which we took was nasopharyngeal swab sample of the patients which are undergoing for the clinical test with the real-time PCR. So the leftover sample, whatever we being tested in the hospitals for the RT-PCR, that we were taking in our lab. And after doing all kind of safety precautions of inactivating the virus with the heat, then finally those lysates were prepared in the urea lysyl buffer. And then we have to digest those to get the peptides from those samples. So one of my PhD scholar, Ayushi, will also TA for this course, is going to show you the steps of doing in solution digestion from these lysate which is prepared from the swab sample. And we are today going to give you a case study about COVID-19 research, how to do using mass spectrometry based proteomics platform. And the very first thing is to start preparing the sample. So you are live now and you are going to watch the some key steps which are going to be involved in the doing this experiment.
So hello everyone, as sir mentioned that first we need to prepare a lysate. So here I have already prepared the lysate which is in urea buffer. So now I'm going to show you the in solution digestion protocol. So first from the lysate, I'll take around 50 microgram of protein. So 50 microgram of the protein I'm taking from the lysate, and then in the in solution digestion tube. And in the first step of the in solution digestion is to add the TCEP. So TCEP is to reduce the disulfide bond. So I'm going to add the TCP here. So 20 millimolar TCP we'll add in the protein lysate, and after that, after the addition of the TCEP, we'll incubate for 1 hour at this will be incubated for 1 hour at 37 degrees C. And after the 1 hour incubation, here in the tube, we'll add the IAA. IAA is basically to alkylate the reduced cysteine residues. So next step is to, after the 1 hour incubation, I've already have this tube. So in this tube, I'm going to add the IAA, which is to alkylate the reduced cysteine residues. So in the same tube, I'm going to add the IAA here. And now this tube will be incubated in the dark for 10 minutes. So because of the time constraint, I have already have the tube which is already in dark for past 10 minutes. I'll use this same tube and I'll add the dilution buffer in the same tube. So that this dilution buffer is having the CaCl2 1 millimolar and the tris. So this is basically to dilute the urea concentration that is present in our lysate. So now I'll add the dilution buffer. To dilute the urea concentration here. And after the dilution, the final step is to add the trypsin enzyme, which will digest the protein into the small peptides. So based on the 50 micromolar, 50 microgram protein that I have taken, so accordingly, I'm going to add the trypsin here. So after the trypsin addition, we need to incubate the tube for 16 hours at 37 degrees C when the digestion will happen. So after that, when the next day you will get the tube, when the digestion is finished, you will again dry the peptides and again do the desalting to clean the peptides. And after that, we'll do the peptide quantification. So now I'm going to show you the peptide quantification step.
All right. So the main thing here is that you can have different ways of digesting your protein. You want to, many times for the mass spec applications for the shotgun proteomics, you want to do in solution digestion, what you just saw. But sometimes you also have the complex samples which are not very compatible with the buffer. Therefore, you'd like to do in gel digestion, and that's where you can run your protein sample or the complex lysates on the SDS page gel, excise those bands, and then you can proceed for the same step which I just showed you for digesting your proteins. Only additional step will be to do the de-staining because you have the gel pieces. You can do de-staining of those. And then after subsequent step, you have to do the same reduction, alkylation, followed by enzyme digestion. Now these things become important because if your protein get properly digested, then only you will have a good number of peptides for subsequent injection into the mass spec. Now, while doing so, you have to also be cautious that there are a lot of salt component coming from the buffer, which has to be removed from the peptide. So desalting step has to be performed, which is immediate thing which next which Aishi will talk, and then followed by peptide quantification. It means how much amount of peptide we got from these samples. Think about, when we are digesting the protein, let's say 30 microgram or 50 microgram, there are many steps involved in doing the digestion. So you will probably end up with losing some peptide at each step. When you do this pipetting the solutions and keep changing those after centrifugation, you are bound to lose some peptide after at each step. So therefore, what you are starting with 30 microgram may not end up with 30 microgram, and it may vary depending on your good handling of sample or not so good handling of sample. So therefore, you need to be very cautious about quantification because finally we want to do quantitative proteomics. Most of the time in any of the biological question, you'd like to know your control and treatment. We'd like to know in this case about healthy individual and COVID positive individual or COVID mild and severe patients. So you want to do the quantification and the comparison of different disease states. So therefore, if you are starting with 100 microgram of the protein for both of them and digesting it and assuming that it's going to be same, that may not be the correct assumption. You have to still do peptide quantification to make sure that whatever you at the end you got peptide level also is equal amount. So peptide quantification becomes very crucial, and that is I think important before you take these peptides for the injection into the mass spectrometer. So let's talk about peptide quantification now.
So after the digestion, the next step is desalting. When the desalting is done, we perform the peptide quantification. So in the peptide quantification, I have reconstituted the digested desalted peptide in 0.1% Fa here. So here 0.1% Fa will be our blank. So first I'm going to add 2 microliters of 0.1% Fa in the microdrop plate. And after the blank, which is the 0.1% Fa, now I'm going to add the digested peptide. Again, the 2 microliter will be used in the same spectrophotometer plate. Right? And this is the spectrophotometer. So I'll just place it here. So this is the software that I'm going to use for peptide quantification. So first we'll select the plate. So it is the microdrop plate. So I'm going to select the microdrop plate. And first sample was the blank. So I'll select the first blank and then the unknown sample. So which is our unknown sample. Now in the protocol, we'll take the absorbance. We'll take the absorbance. Yeah, we'll take the absorbance at 205 and 280. So at 280, we'll take the absorbance of protein, and at 205, we'll take the absorbance of peptide, and we'll select the precision mode. And then we'll do the blank subtraction here only, and we can start the
All right, so shortly you should have some value which you will
Yeah.
have to compute.
Yeah, so these are the value you can get, and you can also transfer it into your Excel sheet. this way. So here are your results summary where you can get the absorbance at 205, 280, and then the blank subtracted value that can be used for the further peptide quantification.
Okay, so these are, I think, very crucial steps involved. And just to give you a little bit more feel of the lab, right? So a lot of samples which come from the different hospital, different clinical settings, they have to be really stored well so that they don't get degraded, right? So that's where you have these type of freezers when you have minus 70 or minus 80 temperature, and all the samples from the biological tissue, plasma, or different type of swab, or anything, any biological material being stored in this kind of freezing condition to ensure that there is no sample degradation happening. And once you have ensured that, then I think you are ready for lysis step for the lysate preparation, and subsequently in solution digestion or quantification, and then peptide quantification. I'll take you to the mass spec room again and now talk to you about the next step. So now the sample is ready. You got the peptides which you have quantified, and you are happy with the quantity of the peptide, right? So you have to come back to liquid chromatography, the nano-LC, which is shown here. And let us try to open the tray. So here actually you are going to place your tube, which is going to be peptides which you have already dried earlier and then quantified and reconstituted. Now those are being placed here. And as you can see, you can keep many tubes, which can be run in the automated manner. So you don't have to physically here for running every sample. We could, just operate that in automated mode as long as we know where the samples are kept in auto sampler. In doing any type of experiment in biochemistry, as you know, you need many controls, you need many standards. Same practice is being followed in the mass spectrometry as well. There is no exception to that. We will talk to you as I go back to the my office, and we will take some theoretical part of it. Finally, from these instruments, so once you inject the peptide, they are getting ionized, and you will see the ionization happening here. And then finally, once the liquid chromatography starts with the hydrophobic, hydrophilic contents of your peptides passing from the reverse phase column, then you are going to see the chromatogram, which is something shown on the screen here. May not be very clear, but I think you can get some idea for the bushes that you can see, which is showing the chromatography, how that has worked for the 2 hours of gradient. So we will take this part in some more detail about the data and data analysis part. I hope by now you are clear that we are talking to you about one of the clinical application, especially in the COVID-19 research. We took the swab sample, prepared the lysate, in solution digestion, peptide quantification, injected in the mass spectrometer instrument, one of the advanced Orbitrap configuration, to separate all the possible peptides and proteins from that. And then we are going to look at what data we got, what is the chromatogram looks like. So there are 2 different key part here. One is to optimize your gradient for the eluting out all these peptides. And that's where good chromatography methods are important. And second thing is to look at the data which you obtain, their intensity and their number of protein coverage, and how to take that data forward for the quantitative analysis. So these 2, another TA, Ditru Biswas, he's going to share the chromatography parameter and the MS configuration, and we will talk further on that.
Hello. So I will share my screen. So if I could be allowed to share the screen. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so currently one of the chromatogram I am showing over here, and before that, let me show you the parameters and the LC gradients that we use. So this is the current LC gradient we are using, where the peptide sample that Sir showed just now, when it is running, we could see that the initial gradient of the percentage of B, so it's a B binary solvent system we are using, where A includes the 0.1% formic acid in water, and B is the 80% ACN in 0.1% formic acid. So as you can see over here, the initial gradient till 30% is linear, where we could see that the percentage of B is 30%. So most of the elution of the the peptides happen in this particular gradient. However, there is a little bit shift of the gradient till 35 to 55%, which you can see the time is from 80 to 110. And finally, we have a more steep gradient followed by the equilibration that we could see, right? So this is the LC gradient which we use for the initial binding, followed by the elution of the the peptides with time. So now, so this is on the basis of the gradient. Now let's go to the next parameter. So this is a a parameter file that we use for the global proteomics, and these are some of the important parameters which I'm just showing in your in the screen, which includes the Orbitrap resolution, where we are keeping the resolution of the Orbitrap in around 60,000, followed by scan range. That means the scan range means what is the minimum to maximum M by Z that the this particular mass spec will scan for. That means from 375 to 1700. Then the RF lens, AGC target, these are some of the specific parameters that helps us to get the data also between the resolution. That means that if there are two peaks are there, for example, how much the separation will happen between the 2 weeks. And as we are using up peptide identification, we go for generally for the positive mode. But if we are going for some of the metabolites or small molecules, we use both positive and the negative mode during that time. So this was some regarding the MS1 parameters, and these are the DDMS parameter, that is the MS2 level parameter, where the isolation window for the M by Z is 2. So as you can see, the specific isolation window that allows the the precursor ion in the detector. Then followed by the then activation type is there. So as there are different types of activation analyzers are there. For example, ACD, ETD, CID. So ACD is mostly used for most of the global proteomics data acquisition. Then there is a collision energy mode. So collision energy helps the particular energy that helps fragmentation of the peptides that happens. So this is we are keeping fixed. So generally this particular collision energy changes a lot when we are like it's more defined when we are going ahead for the MRM targeted proteomics, because this is the particular collision energy changes with peptide to peptide. Then detection time is Orbitrap. The selection over here is present because the Orbitrap fusion is having Orbitrap and also ion trap also. Then the resolution for the MS2 always is less than the MS1, so that is why it is 15,000 over here. Then the maximum injection time is 30. So these are some of the important parameters for the MS1 and MS2 level. And finally, once the let me show you a current run that is happening. So as you can see, this is the current run that is happening, and the acquisition is happening as I have showed the the initial gradient of the from 0 to 15 minutes. It takes time for the binding of the peptides, and followed by from 20 minutes, as you can see, a steep increase of the gradient to 30% of the B. You can see there is a elution of the peptides are happening, and once the whole elution of the peptides happens, the kind of chromatogram what we get looks something like this. And then this particular data we take forward for the further analysis. So this is something which we have tried to give you a understanding that how the peptides from that particular tube is taken inside the MS through nano-LC, and finally the gradient what it's used, and finally how the elution of the peptide looks like in the whole chromatograph.
Yeah, so now I think you are probably able to understand the entire experiment stepwise. And the screen what we see here right now is very important. This shows that entire hard work whatever you have done so far, because you have started from the complex samples, and you had no idea that how your proteome coverage is going to be. So just by visually looking at this chromatogram, a lot of information you can obtain. And you can actually start getting some positive feel that, okay, probably I'm going to get good coverage from this particular sample, because the top box that shows that in 2 hours of chromatography gradient, you are able to separate the peptides very well in a Gaussian pattern. And intensities are also pretty good, which should be ideally e to the power 9 or e to the power 10. And ideally, you'd like to see like how many MS fragmentation you are getting. So if you click on one of these MS data and start looking at whether you are getting sufficient, 8 to 10 MS fragmentation, that will again give you a good idea. You can see in the zoomed in panels here, the MS fragmentation. So these, just visually, this type of information you can obtain, and you can see like, okay, your experiment has worked well so far. But right now you have no idea that what are the proteins present in this complex sample, which are all the peptide you are measuring, right? So you have just acquired the data, which has to be searched against databases. And that's where database search becomes very important. Now, in case of the swab sample, because right now we are talking about COVID-19 patients, nasopharyngeal swab sample. Now we have a possibility for 3 type of, mixture of components available in the respiratory specimen. So think about it coming from the nose respiratory specimen, nasopharyngeal swab, or it may be otopharyngeal swab. So you are going to look for the virus in this case, because you are interested into a SARS-CoV-2 viral detection. So you need a database specific for SARS-CoV-2. Second thing is, because it is coming from the human side, human respiratory specimen, you may expect even the host proteins, right? Because it's coming from host. So host proteins should be searched as well. And because we are talking about the swab sample, which is a good place for having other microbiome, other type of microorganism, so there you might expect even other microorganism, including fungus, including bacteria. And that's where you have heard more recently in the second wave that there were a lot of co-infection happened. Different fungal infection actually aggravated the problem, right? So those could also be possible. Now, what you are seeing, so this is actually live run, what you see on the screen right now, which we are actually running for another sample where data is being acquired. And you can see almost 60 minutes. We can see now the peptides are showing good binding and going to reach to saturation. Then slowly it is going to come back, and you have to elute out all the peptides. Make sure you run a blank, and then your chromatography is ready for injecting the next sample, right? So in this case of the data search becomes very important. And for the COVID-19 data set, we have to search for different type of databases depending on what question we want to address. Let me share my screen quickly to you and try to get you some idea for the experimental workflow. So in this case, the patient swab sample when being collected, the real-time PCR experiment happened, which determined the CT value, which you're all aware by now. And the lower the CT value, especially 16 or 18 or 20, that indicates there is higher viral load, and higher the CT value, that indicates lower the the viral load. But anything which is CT values are there, and you see the positive, then those are COVID positive patients. And rest will be where you are not able to detect virus, those are COVID negative patients. So we get these samples from the patients, and we try different type of extraction methods of extracting the proteins from the swab sample. Then we separated in the LC-MS based approach using these Orbitrap instruments, and obtained this type of global proteome data set. Here you can see, same chromatogram which we are showing you live from the different experimental run which is happening. So I think let me take a couple of short questions in the meantime before I come to the workflow. I think one student, probably Gargi, she had asked about how we can use mass spectrometry in various methods. So this is actually a good place to discuss about this question. Of course, what we are talking right now is not about native protein. We are talking about denatured proteins, right? Proteins have been denatured, peptides have been made, and then we are going to dissect out all the peptides from the given sample and trying to analyze that peptides from that sample. You can always do even other type of analysis from the your protein. You can do even some level of structural analysis also with the native protein and look for their possible modifications and different other characterization, especially people do for monoclonal antibodies and other type of native protein. But right now, let's focus into more about the shotgun proteomics approach with the digested peptides. And here one possibility is to look at all the proteins possible from that given sample. Could be viral, could be human, could be other infection type. And second is, can we also use a different type of mass spec configuration to develop the clinical test, clinical assays, which is shown in the below panel, which is known as selected reaction monitoring assay. So in this case, let's start the some idea for you to get the experimental detail. Then we will come back to live showing you data analysis. So we had multiple things to try out in the COVID time because there was no SOP, no protocol made. We had to try out everything new, and we used different extraction methods to try and see where we can get the viral peptide, because we had no idea can we detect mass spectrometers can detect the viral peptides or not. And if we can detect those, can we develop the specific peptide-based test and assay using triple quadrupole-based mass spec? So when we tried different extraction methods from isopropanol, ethanol, acetone, and did this deep proteome coverage, it means every single peptide present in this given sample of swab, we tried to analyze that. And we could see there are several unique peptides, almost 26 to 32 peptides are coming from different methods. And when we pool different extraction methods, that yielded us maximum number of viral peptide. What we are looking at, this data searched against a specific database for SARS-CoV-2 database. Again, in proteomics, you will realize as you will start doing more work, the database search becomes very crucial because you need to find the right databases as a reference to search your entire data. And it will only give you information for those set of the proteins coming from this virus in this case, or the human in other case. This is a chromatogram, and then you show different type of methods are yielding you these. So finally, based on this knowledge which we obtained from the Orbitrap Fusion, which was looking at the entire shotgun proteomics data set, we can then select 11 peptides which are highly abundant in at least many patients which we could see, from belonging from a spike protein to nucleoprotein to replicase proteins. And these peptides were then selected to develop the selected reaction monitoring assay. And for doing that, we have to then use different type of mass spectrometer, triple quad mass spec. I'll go to that in some time and talk to you about how we develop this assay. But let's go back and look at the little bits about chromatogram analysis, and also how we can develop this kind of SRM assay, selected reaction monitoring assay. So again, Deep is going to now share his screen and show you a bit of data analysis and moving toward the targeted analysis.
Hello. Yeah. So now let me share my screen once again. Yeah. Hope my screen is visible. Yeah. So as you have seen that sir has discussed that when we have the targets and we are sure that which particular proteins that we want to go and go ahead to finally take it forward for a targeted assay development. But before that, a lot of things happens to ensure that the instrument, the quality of the data, whatever we are acquiring, are fine or not to go ahead really for making that particular protein as a target which can be taken forward for the detection of the of a particular disease, which, for example, we are talking about COVID. So for that, what we need to know is that how much the quality of the detection on the basis of the increasing order of the any particular QC samples is coming. For example, in most of the cases we are using BSA. As you guys will be you will understand that for even doing a Bradford assay also we need a standard, right? And we use that standard also to check that what is the unknown concentration of the unknown is coming. Over here, we use this particular thing when we are using this particular BSA. Over here we are trying to see that how this particular the peptide is coming when we are putting injecting that particular injecting BSA in 200 nanogram, 400 nanogram, 600 nanogram, 800 nanogram, and 1000 nanogram. So not only for one peptide, we have seen this thing for most of the abundant peptides that we get in DSA. So as you can see,
Yeah, I just like to add here that what we are showing now that, once from the label-free quantification or shotgun data set, you know that which peptides are, very abundant, which peptides, like for example, I showed you 11 peptides. Which peptide would you like to target? And in this case, it was the, let's say, viral peptide, but we can also look for the host peptides, human proteins. Any peptide which you would like to develop your test. So you know those peptide sequences, and you'd like to develop this kind of test where you can take a complex sample, and rather than screening for every single peptide, which is thousands to million maybe over in the complex sample, why to waste time and energy to screen every single thing if we are only finally going to look for these 11 peptides or 20 peptides on the host. So then you are going to only focus on those selected peptides. That's what is known as selected reaction monitoring. And now you are going, what we are talking is a different instrument data, which is coming from triple quadrupole mass spectrometer. But while doing so, please make sure that, while we talk about proteomics and proteogenomics, don't lose your basic concept and don't lose your biochemistry. Making your standard graph, doing calibration, doing quality control checks are equally important, if not more in this case, because you generate so much data here. So therefore, we have to be very cautious about how to develop our assay, how to make sure that it is really reproducible. And right now what we are talking is a technology which is almost analogous to ELISA. Many of you are familiar with enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay, ELISA, where you have anti and antibody reaction and you are going to measure abundance of a given protein from the complex sample, which is routinely being tested and used in all the hospitals. But that relies on antibody availability, good antibody set, which most of the time you don't have, especially if you think about an unknown problem like this for COVID-19, where we had no idea for what protein we are identifying, and you had no time to raise antibodies and do the test on that. It was actually much faster. Can we look at a mass spec based approach to test out and look for the abundant selected peptides? But again, how quantitative your test is, because what we are developing is quantitative assay. Therefore, showing this kind of calibration curve becomes very important, that even if you take a standard protein, your instrument can it really measure with the same concentration gradient what you're injecting here, and you see the intensity response to the same proportion. So that's what it's displayed on your screen here very nicely, that different amount of standard protein being injected, and that shows good linear response. That's the very first step towards your assay development. Before you go to any kind of clinical assay development, it's important that you make sure that your instrument performance is being evaluated well, your pipetting, your concentration, everything is actually equilibrated well, and you have the good quantification values for those. After doing these kind of standard peptide, you also want to see like what can be your limit of quantification, what could be your limit of detection, how low you can go for detecting these peptides. So that's what we are going to talk next now.
yeah. So now just looking into these things, we can understand that the quantification and the how the quantification is happening for each of the peptides are very much sensitive, and instruments are giving a very sensitive data in terms of the quantification. Now the next thing is that the kind of experiments we do, it generally takes 3 to 4 days. So for that also, we make sure that from day 1 to till day 5, whatever the experiments is happening, whatever samples we are running, we should also run some QC samples for that. So most of the cases, we take some of the complex lysate samples, and in those complex lysate samples, we generally see 1 or 2 peptides, or some more, at least 2 to 3 peptides for those particular protein, which is generally a housekeeping kind of protein. For example, as this one you can see is a GAPDH, and we try to see the level of the peptides in different day-wise manner. And over here you can see from day 1 to day 5 that peak area we are getting for these particular peptides are pretty similar. That means there is no day-to-day variation that we are getting, which is very important for any kind of assay development, or a kind of targeted mRNA based peptide assay development. So after getting this particular information that, okay, from in terms of the quantification and also in terms of the day-to-day variation, our instrument is working fine. The next part is that what we are going ahead for, getting the kind of LOD and also the calibration of the retention time. So this is a very important thing, and this is a particular list of heavy level peptide that we have used in our lab to make a calibration retention time graph, where all these peptides you see are 6 different peptides over here, and we have optimized these peptides in such a way that when you are looking into this particular graph over here, you will see that these particular 6 peptides are covering the maximum stretch of the gradient that we are using. And when I will show this particular regression, you will see that the regression of this particular 6 peptides are coming very near to 1, and that is giving an idea that this particular peptide, when this particular set of peptide when will be taken forward in future, should be used for the retention time calibration. And let me show you how this thing actually works. So if you go over here, we have set all this list of this peptide of the 6 peptide, and if I select this particular thing, you can see this particular 6 peptide, doesn't matter what is the gradient we are using, it will help you to calibrate your whole gradient from 0 to 100. And maybe after 1 month or maybe 1 year, we are trying to reproduce the same assay in maybe a different gradient or even the same gradient, but the instrument has obviously there will be not the same reproducibility we will see in the instrument. But even after 1 year, when we will use the same calibration mix over here, we will get we can use this particular calibration mix to calibrate the retention time whatever we are getting 1 year back. So this is a very important. Over here we have tried to use a mix of heavy level peptide from our lab, but generally this kind of calibration mix, which is IRT peptides, are available commercially also. So once this part is done, the next part, which is very important, is that to understand the the peptide, that what is the LOD of the peptide, or what is the limit of detection of the peptide. So for that, what yes.
All right. So what you are seeing is essentially assay development, right? So I hope you understand that developing any test, any kind of assay requires a lot of thought process. And let me keep moving ahead and keep talking to you about the experiments while you are also understanding the nitty-gritty of data analysis part, right? But before that, let me take this question from the forum from Homan. I think he is asking that by knowing the peptide fragment information, how we will be knowing the entire protein information, and also explain the PTM identification for the peptides to the whole protein. So I think it's very nice but loaded question, Homan. You have a lot of things you have asked in one question. Essentially, as what we are talking, as you can see, that we are looking at peptides only, and you are right that how to obtain information based on that to know which proteins are present in a given sample. That's where I said that the database search becomes very important, and there are many criteria which you have to follow to ensure that we are not doing protein sequencing, right? Unlike N-terminal sequencing, when you can look at the entire amino acid composition and peptide sequence, what we are looking at fragment of peptides, right? So if this is the entire of my protein, and only few parts of the peptides I'm able to get, based on that information, I need to decipher what could be my protein composition for that. So therefore, you have several criteria, especially that when you take all the peptide fragments and search against the database, it should at least have more than 2 unique peptides, which is going to map to in the database to a given protein. Then only with confidence you can say that this is going to be the right protein. Still, you can't be 100% confident. You can only say with 99% confidence, because you are doing indirect approach of searching for the protein. You are not sequencing the entire protein. So you can always question that, how accurate it is. But it's, as I said, more than 99% it is accurate. And it's going to be very, large scale and high throughput way of identifying all the proteins from your given sample, which, unlike the N-terminal sequencing, which is going to take time for each one of those to do the sequencing, it can be very rapid with the mass spectrometer. So mass spectrometry based proteomics relies on looking at the fragment of peptides, searching against databases with very stringent guidelines. I'm sure with my MOOC lectures, you will find more information about those parameters and guidelines, how to analyze your data and how to search the data again in different databases. That will address your first question about searching the proteins. Second will be, of course, to look at the post-translation modification. That is still very challenging. For doing so, if you are very much keen into a specific type of modification like phosphorylation, you can always enrich your phosphopeptide from the complex sample and first try to enrich the sample preparation for the phosphorylation phosphopeptides. Only run those in the mass spectrometer to know what are phosphorylation coming from the sample. Or you can look at the global data, and within that you can search against specific modifications for different PTM and do possible predictions for phosphorylation, acetylation, glycosylation likewise. But then you have to go back and check manually that, okay, for the phosphorylation, do I see 98 Dalton change over there? What is the phosphate residue being added? And all that has to be manually has to be inspected to confirm that. So therefore, that becomes slightly more cumbersome process, but it is possible to look for the PTM from the even global data set or complex data set. Nevertheless, if you're keen into the PTM, you should prepare your sample accordingly to enrich the modification, because those are very low abundant modification what we are talking about, right? But in the mass spec, it is going to show you the mass, and if you see change in the mass, then you can accordingly predict the type of modification happening over there. That at least gives you some flavor of it, but a lot actually goes on research to identify the PTMs and confirm those. Now, from the same data as we are talking, rather than looking at the viral peptides, we can also look at host peptides and host protein. That's what we did. The same data now we search against the human database. And what we can see now, COVID negative versus COVID positive patients. Again, the QC pool, the standards, the quality control checks are very important that we do all the time. And based on this data analysis, we could see that, okay, there is some changes we can right away monitor in the COVID negative and COVID positive patients. Can we look into which proteins are, showing the maximum change? And several of these proteins, especially lactate dehydrogenase and, angiotensinogen, some of these proteins are also clinically relevant, which have been shown in the, different clinical tests that they are showing difference into the positive negative patients. Also, we try to look at the non-severe and severe group of patients using swab sample. We could see some changes, some differentiation happening in the two groups, but then we became more curious. Can we come up with some newer test and newer approach which could do patient severity prognosis? Because most of the time, real-time PCR tests can already do the detection part. Can we look into the more of the disease prognosis aspect? Of course, while doing so in the entire process of proteome analysis, you can also get understanding of different pathways which are getting modulated in these patients. So even from the swab sample, we could see neutrophil degranulation, mRNA translation machinery, platelet degranulation, many of these things getting quite perturbed, and most of our proteins are being mapped to these pathways. So these pathways then require more attention towards the drug repurposing aspect. So coming to a different sample type, which is the plasma sample rather than swab sample. Swab can be used much more efficiently for the viral detection, but can we look at disease severity response from the blood sample, especially plasma sample? Plasma being taken from the severe COVID patients on different time interval when the patient is actually having disease severity. There are different blood parameters are being measured on day 7, day 10, day 14, for example, right? And they're looking at platelet count, hemoglobin, they're looking at various other CRP protein, interleukin 6. Many of these things are being measured. Idea was, can we come up with some sort of a better understanding that what makes COVID positive patient population within those, the mild versus the severe different. So that was something which we started with first. We had the patient plasma sample, which we depleted using the depletion column, which could remove the immunoglobulin and the IgGs and the albumin kind of proteins. Various other abundant protein as well, protein depletion. And then we ran the same workflow of the separating all the peptides from those samples. Did a lot of analysis, which I'm not going to talk right now in the short time left available. Based on these analysis, then we thought, okay, can we pick up some specific peptide which are showing differential response in the two different cohorts of either negative positive or moving more towards the severe non-severe. So in the severe, non-severe case, which was the most interesting, because so far no technology was able to provide you, much more insight that how a patient can move and progress from the non-severe to the severe type. So looking at the entire proteome signature, now we have good idea that which are all protein changing, because we are talking about thousands of protein and their analysis, their intensity changes because of the disease. And then we look at across in the very large big data set, which gives us complete picture of what all changes are happening. We could see actually many protein which are also clinically tested that time, including CRP, including IL-6, including ferritin, D-dimer, all of those proteins we could also see in this patient. But finally, we see like there are some many more interesting proteins are there. Can we develop our test based on that, right? So what I show you here is the non-severe and severe comparison, which is mild and severe comparison. After doing the entire complex proteome analysis, we figure out few protein and their peptides, and like angiotensinogen, apolipoB protein, serpin, fibrinogen gamma chain protein, many of them showed very huge difference from the non-severe and severe group of patients. Let me hand over to Deep again to show you some live data on this analysis part of the severity progression, because that's something some of you have asked, some curious question based on that.
Okay, so I will share my screen and I will show you the data that we have generated for the COVID plasma project and what sir was just showing. So
Yeah, so what we are looking at now, large number of patients and only specific peptides for these proteins, right? And then what you see is the actual data being acquired. And for a given protein, as one of you have asked for, so we have multiple peptides for that protein, which we know confidently that mass spec can detect those. And for example, protein, apolipoB protein, that came one of the very interesting protein for mild to severe comparison. Can we measure that, and can we see are there any changes happening in my two cohorts of the mild and severe group of patients, right? So that's where you see this graph here on the below, where the quantification you can see for these peptides. And these are the severe group of patients on the left side here and the non-severe on the right side. And Deep can now show you some of the skyline data for their intensities on the top.
yeah, so for as we have showed that we also check the QC of the data. So we have spiked the synthetic peptide over here, and as you can see, this particular synthetic peptide throughout all the sample, doesn't matter it's a severe or the non-severe, has came almost same. So now if we are going, I will show you some of the peptide which are coming from the protein of interest that we have got from the analysis of the global protein data. For example, this one of the protein. So for this one of the protein, which is angiotensin, as you can see, the three peptides are there. And if you see down, you will see that all the severe patients, we are getting a very good intensity and the identification of this peptide, that is the response of this peptide properly. And in the over here, you can see the spectral library that we have generated from the global proteomics data. This helps you to understand really well that whether the peptides that we are getting are the correct peptide or this particular peptide is a false discovered. Sometimes whatever response we got in the MRM is not for the actual peptide. So we make sure that the particular peptide, the fragmentation of this peptide, for example, the Y5 ion, Y3 ion, and the rank given over there are matches with the fragmentation we are getting for the transition over here.
All right. Timing is getting short now. Let me just take a quick question from Anvita Pant. I think she's asking for that, are there some overlapping possibility that, some are negative patient and we could see the response and possible prediction as asymptomatic. So you're right. I think mass spectrometry much more sensitive, and here what we are looking at the various peptides coming from virus. So what we found it very interesting that several individuals which were termed as the COVID negative from the real-time PCR data, but they were actually recovered. So in the past they had the COVID, but they had recovered. We could actually detect the viral peptides in those as well. So they actually got grouped into the COVID positive group, and we are very much worried at what happened, why these negatives are actually coming to the positive. Later on, from the clinician, we found out these are recovered patient who had just recently recovered from the COVID-19. So it means you can see that they are still carrying some viral peptide trace. And while RT-PCR sure it is negative now, but still they have some mild carrier as infection, or at least the dead viral peptides are still available. So this is where you can see different technologies have different sensitivity. And in the second wave of COVID, it became much more apparent that if there is a mutation in the given gene sequence, then probably you are not able to detect the right, the SARS-CoV-2 spike proteins. And therefore, if you're looking at these kind of peptide sequences from different proteins, from replicase, nucleoprotein, spike protein, you have much higher chances of making much more accurate detection. One last quick question I take from Gargi, that our mass spectrometry and reverse vaccinology are related. I don't think so, but you can talk to us in more detail separately. What we are talking about is the technology which can be utilized for every single thing, including it has a potential in vaccine research or virology research or cancer research for that matter. I hope in a short time today we were able to give you some flavor live from the lab, how to start from a given clinical problem, especially so relevant like COVID-19, do sample preparation, acquire data, was very unknown data in the mass spectrometers, do your due diligence of looking at assay development, and try to come up with some tests which could make detection as well as disease prognosis. This is where I think power of these proteomics and proteogenomics technologies are coming forward. We have many interesting examples and much more powerful things, for the cancer research, but that could be for some other time. Thank you everyone for joining us for today's live session. I hope you're enjoying the MOOC courses and will be very keen and happy